Hello, everyone, and welcome today. I'm Wendy Morgan. I'm the CEO and founder of Shift, and I have with me a wonderful friend, KT Waxman, who's joining us today to talk about nursing and the issues facing nursing right now. And she's a very unique perspective, which she'll go into in a minute, because she has so many hats that she wears and seeing these issues from so many different angles. So welcome, Katie, if you'd like to give a quick introduction.
I'll try to be quick. So I'm KT Waxman. I'm a doctorally prepared registered nurse in the state of California. And I am currently professor and director of the Doctor of Nursing Practice DNP program at the University of California, San Francisco School of Nursing, and the co-director of the Leadership Institute for the UCSF Health System, where we're doing a lot of leadership development at multiple levels. My other hat is that I am the director of the California Simulation Alliance, which is a program of health impact, which is our state's nursing workforce center. And the CSA has been in existence since 2008. We do training, education, consultation, write scenarios, distribute scenarios for simulation. And I've been in that space since 2005. And I'm now past president of the Society for Simulation in Healthcare. So I have a simulation background and leadership background, primarily in hospitals, health systems, until 2009 when I made the leap into academia. So that's me.
That's wonderful. And making it quick. Thank you. So you and I have a lot of alignment because, of course, with Shift, we being a technology training company, everything that we do is through the lens of equity and advancing health equity. And I focus through that on well-being and mindfulness. And so there's been quite a bit of alignment in things there. But as you're noticing, and everyone around us is noticing, as are we, that things are just really rocky right now. They're issues that are facing nursing, particularly, that have always been around, but are just compounded right now, so much so. And so, these conversations, I just love to have different perspectives and solutions. What are some things that we might do? So it's particularly around leadership, because we're hearing oftentimes that nurses are tired of being told, go be more resilient. Here's how you can be more resilient. Go take some yoga classes. And they would like to see that at a leadership level, there's some effort and some work underway for helping the organization be resilient and supporting the nurses. What are some things you're hearing and finding and working on in that space right now?
So one of the other hats that I wear is the editor-in-chief for Nursing Administration Quarterly Journal. And of late, we have had multiple articles submitted on this topic, whereby healthy environments are being created, wellness programs being set up. And I always wonder, well, what about the leaders who are setting these up? And first of all, are people taking advantage of it? Do we have any outcome data to support that it's working? Because lately, people are leaving the profession. People are retiring early. And my biggest concern right now is the nursing shortage, especially related to nursing leadership. People are wanting to go in and do their job and go home and not be in a leadership position. And then I worry about the leaders. Are they burned out? The turnover is high now. It used to be you were in a job for 10, 20 years, and now, it's 3 to 5 years. And they just can't do it anymore because it is hard work. And what's in it for the leaders? So they're building these programs, but what happens to them? If they don't stay, then sometimes the programs fall apart. So it goes back to leadership and being able to lead these programs and really understand mental health and how important it is, and to establish programs along the continuum for not only our staff, but our patients. So those are critical things that are happening right now in nursing. And we're going to be in a crisis very soon, if not already.
Yeah, because there's so many factors involved. When you talk about turnover, oftentimes in the news and things, you'll hear about, so there's a shortage of nurses and the impact that has on the hospital itself, but the impact that, as you're saying, has on the leaders and then the nurses themselves. So now you're having to pick up extra shifts, float, and then that adds in more and more to your burnout. But, getting the whole, all of the nurses, whether they're travel nurses or they're permanently, to buy into something, I'm often hearing that's difficult, and something being like a wellness program or something like that. How do we get so the leadership buys in? They've got some tools and strategies, which maybe we'll get into those more in a minute. But then what are some things they can do that the nurses will accept this work that they're doing so we can see a difference?
Well, I think they need to talk the talk and walk the walk, and role model behavior and take days off for themselves and show that that's okay. I think these programs need to be a lot of what I'm hearing are app-based programs where a nurse can just click on their phone and take a moment to do some reflection or meditation. And we just published a paper on that topic where it was an app-based mindfulness program. And I know there's a lot of them out there, but it's got to be quick and easy. You can't say, okay, tomorrow's your mindfulness day, your balance day, so you're going to come in, you're going to do these things. That doesn't happen. They need to be able to, first of all, have permission to say, I need to take a break, right? And that's not always happening. And then when they go into the break room or this place that's peaceful, are they supported to go there? And, in the state of California, we have nursing ratios. So if I leave the unit to do something, I have to replace myself because the ratios are out of whack. Mm-hmm. And that costs money. So it all goes back to that. So I think, yes, more and more programs need to be created, but we need to support and, talk the talk, and not just do it because it's trendy.
Right. Or a Band-Aid. So, and, so oftentimes from our nurse participants, we're hearing, well, great, it's an app and it's designed for mindfulness and I can click on it, but it's not about me. It's just a generalized meditation app. And the people who are giving us these things, they don't really understand what we're going through. And, even the physical space sometimes on a unit that, you have to go a certain distance to even get a drink of water or to go to the restroom. And then, so sometimes it feels like these problems are insurmountable and just offering up these quick fixes isn't going to do it. But of course, I always like to look at what's the positive here. What is something we can do? And so kind of an old one, but if you're trying to eat the elephant, when you look at the whole system, it needs fixing. And it's much like education and our prison systems. We can't do that. And then we get overwhelmed and we all just want to quit. So, our focus as a company and mine as a passion is what are just the small steps that we can do. So yeah, walking the walk, talking the talk. But are you seeing technology as a solution? I mean, is it being accepted as a solution in general?
I think yes and no. I think some places have embraced it more than others. I think that cost is always a barrier. Mm-hmm. And if they have, an innovation, not department, but, commitment to innovation and technology, they're more apt to buy into this topic. And if you have a leader that's going to push it through, even better. Mm-hmm. I think that leaders right now, if you have a team, a group of people who feel passionate about, the well-being of their staff, that they'll purchase what they need to purchase to make it happen, right? So I think that in some smaller community hospitals, they just don't have the funding, in mm-hmm. schools as well. But the ones that are using technology have great outcomes. And I feel like eventually it's just going to be the norm, and I think the pandemic pushed us there to do more like telehealth mm-hmm. kinds of things and use more simulation. So I think it's a good time to be launching programs that we could really show a return on investment by looking at retention and employee engagement and satisfaction using technology.
Yeah, absolutely. So, of course, with us, we use virtual reality, and it has many applications. And there are times when it's like, oh, VR can do anything and everything. And of course, I don't agree, but it's a wonderful tool. And so, some of the things are like training. Can you use virtual reality to speed up training? Would that help at all? Or could you use virtual reality for an escape? So you go into the break room and can suddenly be in Hawaii for 5 minutes and taking deep breaths on a beach. Have you used virtual reality? Do you have any familiarity with the impacts of that?
I love virtual reality, first of all. I believe that it is here to stay. It has been a slower ramp up than, say, high fidelity mannequins, but it fits into the simulation space. And I've been following VR for a long time. I have a headset. I use it. I know of places who have great success using it for task training, in particular. For instance, during the pandemic, you couldn't get into practice on a mannequin or a real person, which we don't like to just start practicing on real people. We like to use VR or mannequins to practice. And they had great success where they used VR for intubation. And all their nurse practitioner students had to intubate on VR as many times as they wanted, because they can do it anytime they want. Mm-hmm. And when they came back into the clinic, they were proficient. They could just flip it right in, and VR got them to that place. So and they've just published that. And so I think more publications on the topic are going to help a lot. Mm-hmm. But it all goes back to money. And when I talk to clients that are wanting, oh yeah, well, VR is too expensive. Well, it really isn't. If you look at the return on investment in the big scheme of things, it's not that expensive. Mm-hmm. And that's, I think, a barrier that really isn't a barrier. They just think it is. Mm-hmm. And the schools that have given students headsets and incorporated VR into their curriculum are doing really, really well. And other schools say, how did you swing that? Well, they just did. Yeah. It was an expense, but they did it. And the faculty need to buy into it too, because a lot of current faculty are older. They're digital immigrants, not natives. And so it's harder to sell it. So I think once we see all these outcomes that are being published, the better it'll be for the VR world, because it's not going away.
Yeah, because you think about the cost of a mannequin, these high fidelity, they're extremely expensive. And then when I look at that through my lens, which is how do we make sure that we're treating our patients equitably, therefore we've gotten our nurses to be able to interact with patients from different backgrounds. You can't do that with the mannequins. And then you look at a VR headset, and it's $300, and you can train thousands of hours. But not only that, you can have the participants interacting with a variety of different types of patients and different cases, and even adding in the extra stressors. So, to me, it feels like that would be never going to replace simulation, clinical hours, any of that, but to be able to augment it. And I love seeing that this research, you've mentioned several papers, we'll have to post that in the comments of the video later. But yeah, seeing the research come out, I think that's going to really help with the acceptance of using this type of technology. But then just circling back to the general problems that we're facing right now and how it can feel so insurmountable, and kind of we want a quick fix. Could VR be that? Could an app be that? But in your research or the papers that you're reading, what are you seeing data points on something that is beginning to show a difference? And, is it capping salaries? Is there a technology? Are there just steps that as a CNO, for example, could take in the next month?
I think that, the hospitals out there that are really implementing evidence-based practice into their organization and going for magnet or being on the magnet, they say journey, but calling it something else now, moving towards magnet. Mm-hmm. The components are there. And, part of that is, joy in work and, healthy work environments. And so when you're committed, to magnet and to evidence-based practice, you'll probably end up with happier staff. Mm-hmm. I think that a lot of the problems are when you don't have, people are just doing their own thing. They don't have policies. They don't have supervision. They're going rogue. I mean, COVID was a time where everybody was just doing whatever they needed to do to get it done. Mm-hmm. And we burned out a lot of people. So I think flash forward to now when we're on the mend, we're trying to figure out what the new normal looks like. It should include technology because it's been proven effective during the last couple of years to get us through the pandemic. Mm-hmm. And so we need to then embrace it and move forward. I think that looking at changing healthcare in general is something we need to think about, just the delivery of healthcare in the acute care hospital per se. We always focus on that, but there's a continuum out there. There's ambulatory care, home care, skilled nursing, long-term care, home care. And over the next few years, that acute care hospital is going to get smaller. So I think looking at the healthcare system globally and figuring out how we can have technology support our staff along the continuum is going to happen and telehealth mixed into that groove. But I think it's an assessment of where do you as a nurse or as a healthcare professional belong in the continuum. It's really sexy to work in the NICU and the ED, right? But what about along the continuum as your career evolves? Maybe you'll best serve the geriatric population. And we don't do that. Once you get in your place, we want you to stay there. We don't say, let's reassess where you want to go. Let's take this little test and see how you feel now after 20 years in the NICU. I mean, it's just something I'm thinking about because it will end up, the acute care hospital is going to be all monitored, very sick patients, very different skill set of the healthcare providers that are working there. But there's this whole other range that is going to happen. And the top of the pyramid is not going to be acute care hospital in the future.
Interesting. That is a new perspective. I actually have not heard that fleshed out to that degree. Very insightful. And I will circle back to the healthy workplaces and tying into your leadership training. So when you go in and you speak to the top level leaders and say, okay, here are some first steps you can do. One thing that we've heard about and I like to do is say, talk to the people that you're serving first. Find out what they really need and what they really want. Because when people feel that they're being heard, then they're more willing to engage in things that are being changed to enhance their well-being or a healthy workplace. What is something like one or two other things you would say, here's some first steps you could take? You've decided to make a change, go with this.
I think they need to do an analysis of their workforce in terms of generations. Right now we have 5 generations working in the workforce, and soon it'll be 4 once everyone retires. But that's a challenge in and of itself. You cannot take a 65-year-old, 35-year nurse and say you're going to start using VR tomorrow. Okay. You can take a 22 or 25-year-old. And so I think that, when you look at the millennials and the younger folks, talk to them and see what they're looking for, because their lens is very different. Incorporate some of this technology with the early adopters and some of the leaders that are early adopters and get it embedded into the culture of the organization. I think another place to start is OR, because OR, we have a huge shortage pending. And to work in the OR, people don't just volunteer, hey, I think I'm going to go work in the OR. You have to have a lot of training. It's a different environment. And I think VR can be a great mechanism to train or get somebody familiar with it. Maybe this is something you'd want to do. Maybe we have VR in all the different areas. Here you are, a new grad. Where would you like to work? Well, let's show you what the OR is like. Let's show you what because they haven't been in there physically because of COVID. And hospitals, a lot of them are just allowing students to observe and not touch patients because they're so sick.
My goodness.
But VR, you could see all the different things along the continuum and then maybe ask some questions like, is that something that scares you? Is that something that excites you? Because there's so many openings right now all around the country. And traveling nurses, you mentioned that earlier, they're not going away. It's a specialty in and of itself. You could even have, do you want to be a traveler? Here's what you would expect. Is this for you? So I think that as a leader, they need to really assess their workforce. What have they got? Who are the early adopters? And start doing little pilots around the hospital, and then people will catch on.
Yeah, I love that. So assess them and then meet them where they are. So, and then there's the next step, right? It's like, okay, I know now I have these different generations and different needs and desires from the training or assistance. Is there a place that a nurse leader could go to find resources, or is it just kind of a Google search and good luck?
No, that's a good question. I think that they need a team of experts to figure that out. I think making rounds is really important as a leader and meeting people in the middle of the night. The needs are different and they often feel left out. So I think that when you build a team, it's not just on the day shift.
That is true. You think when you move up to leadership, maybe you can start working just during the day, but you do have to understand all of the teams working at all times. Yeah. So this has been a great conversation, kind of brief, but so much insight into a new perspective. I love that you have both what the nurses are doing and what the leaders need to do. And you really seem to have a finger on the pulse of technology, and love it that you're a huge advocate of virtual reality. Are there any other, because I see the newsletters come by that say, oh, there's this type of technology, or there's robots, or there's this. Is there anything else that in your mind could be effective, really effective for impacting what we're dealing with as we transition to a new type of healthcare?
I think the robot is good. I actually was just at a recent conference and there was a couple robots there. That was very cool. That's just one aspect. I think academia and service need to align and partner. And so I think if the hospital's doing something with VR or some technology, that the school needs to be brought in, and vice versa. Because the students are going to be working at that hospital or in that system. And one thing that has always bothered me is if you're trained in simulation in a school as a student, and then you go into the hospital and they put you in front of a PowerPoint presentation for 8 hours, you're going to say, where's the sim, right? So the students are the advocates. On the other hand, if they had a bad experience in simulation, because we have to have faculty trained to run simulation following the appropriate healthcare standards set forth by NACSL and SSH. If they don't follow those, it could be a horrible experience for the learner. And then when they get in the hospital and then they say, we're going to do sim, then they get scared and nervous. So it's important for the school and the hospital to align, because the school is that's the workforce generator.
Right. Yeah. I was having a discussion just yesterday about how particularly on the wellness of the nurses and how it's a behavior change. So not only are we saying go do extra work to do this, to learn how to take care of yourself, it's not something that they're accustomed to. And many of the care professions, you learn how to say yes and not how to say no. And so then taking that back to the students as they're coming through, learning how to integrate self-care into their practice before they even come to work at a hospital. And I hear you saying the same thing. If we could start there. So unfortunately, it goes against human nature of what's our quick fix? How can we solve this by, next week? It is going to take time, but I am hearing that there are some things we can do, especially as leaders, to really begin to impact and hopefully be able to retain nurses and not just get them to stay, but have a healthy work environment so they can thrive and then give better care, which is the ultimate goal.
And I think the more leaders we have writing up the results of what they're doing so that they can share that with others, the better. We want to hear, did you do it and did it work? And what were your barriers? What can I do differently in my organization? And did it help retention? Did it help satisfaction? Because if it didn't, and, it all goes back to, job satisfaction equals retention equals cost savings and better patient care, all of those things. And so if technology can help facilitate any of that, that would be awesome. And I think that a sim lab in a hospital or sim center should be open 24/7 for staff to go down at any time to either practice, to reflect, whatever the case may be, have all sorts of different kinds of technology available for them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That is one benefit of VR. It is anytime, anywhere, literally.
That's right.
So I know so much of things now is doom and gloom. This is so bad, all that. But I love to end on a note of hope. And you've given a lot of insight into where we can go with healthcare. And it does look optimistic. Change is always difficult, but much to look forward to. But anything in closing of, not a we got this, but what's the hope in the future of how can we take what's come out of this pandemic and is pretty bad now? Where can it be that's good? Where can we go with it?
Oh, I think there's a lot of silver linings that came out of the pandemic. We were able to pivot and do things that would have taken years to implement. Telehealth is one. Overnight we were like, okay, we can do this on FaceTime or Zoom. We can do this. And, oh, we've got this VR in the background. Let's use that. Let's use the mannequin. So I think that instead of going back, we just need to go forward and take the good things that came out of the pandemic and just keep going. We can get through this. We need more faculty to train students because there's a shortage of faculty. And we just need to do things a little differently, which we are really accustomed to at this point.
Yeah, sometimes it does take a shakeup to make long overdue changes. So,
yeah, for sure.
Well, thank you again so much. Yes, it is exciting. The future is exciting. I know we have hurdles, but there is much to be gained. I also believe in embracing the new now because we have to. So it's been a pleasure talking with you this afternoon.
Thank you for having me.
Time. All right. Bye-bye.